October 2024. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, announced concrete progress toward launching a shared currency and payment system. Not theoretical discussions, not distant plans, actual infrastructure being built. The mBridge platform connecting central banks, digital currency pilots processing real transactions, gold backing mechanisms under development, a financial architecture designed explicitly to bypass the dollar system and reduce American economic leverage over half the world's population. This isn't speculation about what might happen. The systems are operational. China and Russia are already settling trade in Yuan and rubles. India is buying Russian oil in rupees. Brazil is trading with China in yuan. The UAE joined BRICS and immediately began exploring non-dollar oil settlements. Saudi Arabia is considering membership. The group that represented 15% of global GDP in 2001 now represents over 35%, and they're building payment rails that don't route through New York. The BRICS currency initiative threatens dollar dominance more than any development since Bretton Woods. Not because BRICS will suddenly replace the dollar as global reserve currency, that won't happen quickly, but because it provides credible alternatives for countries that want to reduce dollar dependence. Every transaction that settles in BRICS currency is one less transaction creating dollar demand. Every central bank that holds BRICS reserves is holding fewer dollars. The cumulative effect of these marginal shifts could accelerate dollar decline from gradual to sudden. This is the story of how the BRICS nations evolved from a Goldman Sachs marketing acronym to a geopolitical bloc-building parallel financial infrastructure. How the aggressive use of dollar sanctions convinced major economies they needed alternatives. How China's technological capabilities and Russia's resource wealth combined with India's enormous market and Brazil's agricultural dominance to create genuine leverage. And how a shared currency backed by commodities and gold could provide the credibility needed to challenge dollar hegemony. Understanding the BRICS currency matters because it represents the leading edge of de-dollarization. The world is fragmenting into competing monetary blocs. The dollar-dominated system that emerged from World War II and was reinforced by the petrodollar is being actively dismantled by countries representing the majority of global population. This transition will be chaotic, crisis-prone, and potentially violent as existing power structures resist displacement. The BRICS currency is the instrument through which that resistance is being organized. The BRICS group originated as a concept, not a coalition. In 2001, Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill coined BRIC to describe emerging markets, Brazil, Russia, India, China, that would drive future global growth. It was investment analysis, not geopolitics, but the countries embraced the grouping and formalized it. The first BRIC summit occurred in 2009 in Russia. South Africa joined in 2010, adding the S. For years, BRICS was more talk than action. Summits produced declarations but limited concrete cooperation. The transformation from discussion forum to potential monetary bloc was driven by American policy. The 2008 financial crisis shook confidence in U.S. financial management. Quantitative easing and zero interest rates suggested the Federal Reserve prioritized domestic concerns over dollar stability. Then sanctions became standard American foreign policy. Russia faced sanctions after Crimea in 2014, then far more severe sanctions after the 2022 Ukraine invasion. Iran has been sanctioned for decades. Venezuela faced asset freezes. China faces technology sanctions and trade restrictions. These sanctions taught BRICS countries a lesson. Dollar dependence is strategic vulnerability. Russia held foreign reserves in dollars. The US and EU froze those reserves, hundreds of billions of dollars made inaccessible overnight. Russian banks were cut from SWIFT, making international dollar transactions impossible. The message was clear: participate in the dollar system, and we can destroy your economy whenever it serves our interests. For countries with ambitions independent of Washington, this was unacceptable. China had been preparing alternatives for years. The Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, CIPS, launched in 2015 as a Yuan alternative to SWIFT. Yuan oil futures began trading in Shanghai in 2018, offering oil producers an alternative to dollar pricing. The Digital Currency Electronic Payment System, DCEP, now called ECNY, is a central bank digital currency China has been piloting domestically and internationally. China's Belt and Road Initiative created yuan-denominated debt and trade relationships across dozens of countries. Russia, facing sanctions, accelerated adoption of alternatives. The System for Transfer of Financial Messages, SPFS, is Russia's domestic alternative to SWIFT, and it's being connected to China's CIPS. Russia and China settled record amounts of trade in yuan and rubles. Russian oil flows to India and China increasingly in local currencies or yuan. Turkey, theoretically a NATO ally, began accepting rubles for Russian gas. Russia proved that major economies could function outside dollar systems, at least partially. India maintains strategic ambiguity. New Delhi values relations with Washington but prioritizes Indian interests. When Russian oil was sanctioned and prices plummeted, India bought massive quantities, settling in rupees. India joined the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, China's alternative to the World Bank. India is developing rupee trade settlements with multiple countries, but India also participates in Western frameworks like the Quad. India's BRICS involvement is about optionality, not choosing sides definitively. Brazil under Lula has explicitly pursued de-dollarization. Lula called for BRICS countries to create their own currency to reduce dollar dependence. Brazil and China settled billions in trade without dollars. Brazil joined currency swap agreements with China, allowing direct real yuan exchange. South Africa, facing economic stagnation, sees BRICS membership as access to Chinese investment and alternative trade networks less dominated by Western conditions. The expansion accelerated momentum. In 2024, BRICS invited 6 countries to join: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and Argentina. Argentina declined under a new government, but the others accepted. Saudi Arabia and UAE joining is geopolitically massive. These are core petrodollar countries, now formally aligning with a bloc-building dollar alternatives. Iran joining brings in a country that's been forced to develop non-dollar systems due to decades of sanctions. Over 40 countries have expressed interest in BRICS membership. The proposed BRICS currency takes multiple forms in various proposals, but common elements include commodity backing, gold reserves, and digital implementation. The currency wouldn't replace domestic currencies initially. It would be a settlement currency for trade between members. Brazil pays China for manufactured goods in BRICS currency. Russia sells oil to India for BRICS currency. The currency itself is backed by a basket of commodities: oil, gold, rare earths, and possibly partially backed by gold reserves held by member central banks. The gold backing addresses the credibility problem. Why would countries trust a currency issued by BRICS when they don't trust fiat currencies issued by individual members? Gold provides anchor credibility. If BRICS currency is redeemable for gold at a fixed rate or backed by gold reserves at a certain ratio, it becomes more than just political promises. This is similar to how Bretton Woods made the dollar credible: gold backing. China has been accumulating massive gold reserves. Russia is a major gold producer. Gold-backed BRICS currency would have genuine commodity support. The digital implementation solves practical problems. A physical BRICS currency would require printing, distribution, and infrastructure, complex and slow. A digital currency exists as ledger entries, transferable instantly across borders. The mBridge platform, developed by central banks from China, Thailand, UAE, and Hong Kong, demonstrates this. mBridge allows instant cross-border payments in central bank digital currencies, bypassing correspondent banking and SWIFT. BRICS could adopt similar architecture, allowing member central banks to settle trade digitally without dollar intermediation. The mBridge platform is more than theory. It's operational and processing real transactions. In 2023, mBridge completed its pilot phase with 20 commercial banks conducting actual cross-border trades worth millions. The transactions settled in seconds rather than days at a fraction of traditional costs. Banks reported 70% cost reductions compared to correspondent banking. Settlement times dropped from days to seconds. The technology works. The architecture uses distributed ledger technology but controlled by central banks, not decentralized like Bitcoin. Each participating central bank operates a node. When a transaction occurs, say a Chinese importer paying a Thai exporter, the Chinese commercial bank requests payment through China's central bank node. The system verifies balances, executes the transfer, and updates ledgers simultaneously across all nodes. The Thai exporter receives payment in baht, the Chinese importer pays in yuan, and no dollars are involved. This is critical infrastructure for BRICS currency. The same technology that powers mBridge can power BRICS settlements. Instead of managing 5 different currencies and exchange rates, BRICS members could settle in a shared digital unit. Brazil's central bank holds BRICS currency reserves. When Brazilian importers buy from China, Brazil's central bank transfers BRICS currency to China's central bank digitally instantly without intermediaries. China's central bank credits Chinese exporters in yuan. The entire process bypasses New York, London, and dollar systems entirely. The mechanics would work like this. Brazil exports soybeans to China. Instead of invoicing in dollars, converting reals to dollars, transferring through correspondent banks, and converting dollars to yuan, Brazil and China settle directly. Brazil's central bank debits BRICS currency from China's account and credits Brazil's account. The transaction is instant, cheap, and doesn't involve dollars. At the end of an accounting period, imbalances between members are settled. Countries with deficits transfer gold or commodities to countries with surpluses. This system appeals to BRICS members for multiple reasons. First, it eliminates exchange rate risk within the bloc. Currently, real yuan exchange rates fluctuate, creating uncertainty for traders. A common settlement currency provides stability. Second, it reduces transaction costs. No currency conversion fees, no correspondent banking charges. Third, it removes dollar intermediation, eliminating the need to hold dollar reserves for intra-BRICS trade. Fourth, it reduces vulnerability to sanctions. Transactions don't route through systems controlled by Washington. The challenges are significant. Member economies are vastly different. China is an industrial powerhouse and exporter. Russia is a resource economy. India is a large consumer market with growing manufacturing. Brazil is agricultural and resource-based. South Africa is relatively small economically. Creating a currency that serves all these different needs while maintaining stability is difficult. Germany and France are similar economies and still struggled with the euro. BRICS diversity is far greater. Political tensions between members complicate coordination. China and India have border disputes and strategic rivalry. India and China compete for influence in Asia. Russia and China cooperate tactically but have long-term strategic differences. Brazil's political orientation swings between governments. Maintaining cohesion requires ongoing negotiation and compromise, especially when members' interests diverge. The group can agree on the goal, reducing dollar dominance, but may disagree on specifics. The currency's value proposition depends on credibility. If BRICS currency is just another fiat currency backed by promises, why would third countries adopt it? The answer must be either credible backing, gold, commodities, or diversified reserves, or network effects. If enough major economies use BRICS currency for settlement, others will adopt it to access those markets. China alone is the world's largest trading nation. If Chinese trade partners can settle in BRICS currency instead of converting to dollars, many will. The implications for the dollar are gradual but cumulative. BRICS currency won't replace the dollar globally. American capital markets are too deep, U.S. legal protections too strong, and dollar infrastructure too embedded. But it doesn't need to replace the dollar to damage dollar dominance. If 30% of global trade shifts to BRICS settlement, that's 30% less dollar demand. If central banks hold 20% reserves in BRICS currency backed by gold, they hold 20% less in treasuries. The Federal Reserve loses policy flexibility. Currently, the Fed can print dollars to address domestic problems, and those dollars are absorbed globally. If global dollar demand drops 20 or 30%, printing has more immediate inflationary consequences domestically. The Fed faces the same constraints other central banks face. Print too much, trigger inflation; print too little, risk deflation and unemployment. The exorbitant privilege diminishes. Treasury bond demand decreases. If BRICS countries hold reserves in their own currency or gold instead of treasuries, there are fewer buyers for U.S. government debt. Reduced demand means higher yields required to attract buyers. Higher yields mean increased debt service costs. With federal debt exceeding $34 trillion, even small yield increases cost hundreds of billions annually. Fiscal space that currently exists because Treasury rates are low would evaporate. American sanctions become less effective. Currently, cutting a country off from the dollar system cripples its ability to trade internationally. But if BRICS offers credible alternatives, sanctioned countries shift to BRICS systems. Russia already demonstrated this. Sanctions hurt, but Russia continued functioning by pivoting to Yuan, rupees, and barter. If BRICS currency provides a ready-made alternative, sanctions become economic inconvenience rather than existential threat. The geopolitical implications extend beyond economics. Dollar dominance has been a key pillar of American power for 80 years. It allowed the U.S. to run deficits, fund military operations globally, and use financial coercion as foreign policy. As that pillar weakens, American power projection capabilities diminish. The $800 billion defense budget becomes harder to justify politically and harder to finance practically. Overseas military bases, expensive to maintain, face more scrutiny when deficit financing isn't cheap. When the London gold pool closed in March 1968, there was no warning. Investors woke up and the market was locked. No gold available, no conversion. Done. We created the 7-stage collapse survival guide so you never get trapped when the window closes. It shows you exactly when to move your wealth into assets that survive collapse, before banks freeze, before governments confiscate, before inflation devours your savings. While you can still act, alliances become more transactional. Part of U.S. alliance value has been economic access. Dollar liquidity, integration into American-led institutions benefits from the dollar system. If countries can access Chinese markets and BRICS trade networks without needing American approval, the incentive to maintain Washington's good graces decreases. We're seeing this with Saudi Arabia, historically a close U.S. ally, now joining BRICS and considering Yuan oil sales. The transition period is the dangerous part. History shows reserve currency transitions are messy. The pound-to-dollar transition took decades and coincided with 2 world wars. When the dominant power feels its position slipping, it often reacts aggressively to maintain status. When rising powers sense opportunity, they push harder. The risk of miscalculation, conflict, or crisis escalation increases. BRICS currency development is occurring amid already high tensions between the U.S. and China, the U.S. and Russia, and broader West versus rest dynamics. Economic crises could accelerate adoption. If a dollar liquidity crisis occurs, a sudden shortage of dollars in international markets, countries scrambling for alternatives might rapidly adopt BRICS systems. This happened partially in 2008 when dollar funding markets froze, spurring interest in dollar alternatives. A more severe crisis could trigger sudden shifts as countries prioritize survival over established systems. BRICS currency adoption could go from gradual to rapid during crisis conditions. The practical timeline depends on execution. The infrastructure exists or is under development. mBridge is operational, CIPS processes billions, BRICS central banks are coordinating. Official launch of a BRICS settlement currency could occur within years. But broad adoption, getting dozens of countries to use it routinely, will take longer. The euro took years to become widely used even within Europe. BRICS currency faces greater challenges but also has larger potential markets. China's role is central. China has the economic scale, technological capabilities, and strategic interest to drive this forward. But China also faces constraints. Other BRICS members don't want Chinese dominance. The currency needs to be perceived as neutral or at least balanced, not a yuan substitute. This requires governance structures where India, Brazil, Russia, and others have meaningful input. Achieving this balance while maintaining momentum requires diplomatic skill China hasn't always demonstrated. Russia's position is complex. Sanctions forced Russia into BRICS alternatives, making Russia the most committed member to de-dollarization. But Russia's economy is smaller than Italy's. Russia brings resources, oil, gas, commodities, and political will, but limited economic weight. Russia needs BRICS currency more than most members, giving Russia less leverage in negotiations. Yet Russia's experience operating outside dollar systems provides valuable lessons for implementation. India's choices matter enormously. India is the world's most populous country, a growing economy, and strategically located. If India fully commits to BRICS currency, it adds massive legitimacy and market scale. If India remains ambivalent or withdraws, the project weakens significantly. India is playing both sides, engaging BRICS while maintaining Western relationships. India's ultimate decision depends on perceived national interest. Is greater autonomy through BRICS worth potentially complicating relations with Washington? The Saudi question is pivotal. If Saudi Arabia fully embraces BRICS currency for oil settlements, it would replicate the petrodollar, but in reverse, creating structural demand for BRICS currency instead of dollars. Given Saudi Arabia already let the petrodollar agreement expire, this isn't impossible. But Saudi Arabia has complex relationships with the U.S., military dependence, political support, historical ties. Saudi Arabia is likely to diversify rather than choose sides definitively, which still benefits BRICS by fragmenting dollar dominance. The developing world is watching carefully. Dozens of countries are frustrated with dollar dominance, IMF conditionality, and Western-controlled financial institutions. But they need alternatives that actually work. If BRICS currency proves functional, stable value, easy settlement, broad acceptance, many countries will adopt it. If it's unstable or unreliable, they'll stick with dollars despite frustrations. The first few years of operation will be critical for credibility. The practical incentives for developing countries are significant. Consider an African nation exporting minerals to China and importing manufactured goods from India. Currently, both transactions require dollars, selling minerals for dollars, using dollars to buy from India. The country needs dollar reserves, faces exchange rate risk on both sides, and pays currency conversion fees twice. With BRICS currency, the country could settle both trades directly, receive BRICS currency from China, pay BRICS currency to India. One currency, no dollar exposure, lower costs. Countries facing dollar sanctions have even stronger incentives. Iran, under sanctions for decades, would immediately benefit from BRICS currency access. Iran exports oil and imports machinery. Currently, Iran struggles to collect payment for oil and struggles to pay for imports because sanctions block dollar transactions. BRICS currency provides a sanctions-resistant alternative. Iran sells oil to China for BRICS currency, uses BRICS currency to import from Russia or India. Sanctions still hurt, but Iran maintains basic trade functionality. Energy exporters see strategic value. Countries dependent on oil or gas exports, traditionally priced in dollars, face exchange rate exposure. When the dollar strengthens, oil becomes more expensive for buyers paying in other currencies, reducing demand. When the dollar weakens, exporters receive less real purchasing power. BRICS currency offers an alternative. Price energy in BRICS currency tied to commodities rather than dollar fluctuations. Russia has already begun discussing this for gas exports to China and India. Agricultural exporters like Brazil and Argentina have similar interests. Brazil exports soybeans, beef, coffee, and sugar to China in massive quantities. Invoicing in dollars exposes both sides to currency risk. Invoicing in BRICS currency eliminates that risk and reduces transaction costs. Given China is Brazil's largest trading partner, settling in BRICS currency rather than dollars makes practical sense regardless of geopolitics. The dollar won't collapse overnight. Too much infrastructure, too many contracts, too much inertia. But dollar dominance could erode faster than most expect. The pound sterling was the dominant reserve currency, backed by the world's largest empire. It took only decades to lose that status once structural factors shifted. The dollar's position is strong but not invincible. BRICS currency provides the most serious challenge to dollar hegemony since the Bretton Woods system was created. The American response will matter. Washington could try to block BRICS currency adoption through sanctions, pressure on fence-sitting countries, or financial warfare. This would likely backfire by proving BRICS members' point that dollar dependence is weaponized. Or Washington could compete by offering better terms, more favorable trade agreements, less aggressive sanctions use, more multilateral cooperation. This would require acknowledging that unipolar dominance is ending, a difficult political admission. The most likely outcome is a multipolar monetary system. The dollar remains important but not dominant. The yuan grows in importance, especially in Asia. The euro serves Europe. BRICS currency handles significant emerging market trade. Gold sees resurgence as neutral reserve asset. This fragmentation reduces efficiency. More currencies mean more complexity, but increases resilience. No single country can weaponize the entire system. You're witnessing the early stages of a monetary order transition that historians will study for centuries. The Bretton Woods system is dying, the petrodollar system already ended. BRICS currency is the leading alternative under construction. Whether it succeeds or fails, the attempt itself demonstrates that dollar dominance is contested, vulnerable, and increasingly optional for major economies. The outcome will reshape global power, economic relationships, and the financial system for decades to come. The infrastructure being built is real, operational, and expanding. Central banks are connecting systems. Billions in trade are already settling outside dollar networks. The technology works. The political will exists. The economic incentives align for most participants. What remains uncertain is timing and extent, how quickly adoption spreads, and how thoroughly it displaces existing systems. The question isn't whether the dollar's exclusive dominance continues. It won't. The question is what replaces it, how chaotic the transition becomes, and how quickly it unfolds. BRICS currency is the primary vehicle for that transition. Every summit that makes progress, every trade settlement in BRICS currency, every country that joins the bloc accelerates the timeline. The system is being built in real time. By the time most people notice, the infrastructure will already be operational. This is decoded economics. Subscribe to see the collapse before it happens.